Hello, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell. It is Thursday, March 29th, in the year of the apocalypse 2012. And this is news and views from the Nefarium, a really interesting article from the Daily Bell, and I really wanted to comment on it. And I'm going to link on the website, I'm going to link the article so that you can actually read it for yourself. But there's some really interesting things in it, and I want to read these to you and maybe comment a little bit. The article is entitled Assange and Anonymous as Elite Helpers. And as usual, the Daily Bell goes into its theme that the internet revolution that we're going through right now is very, very similar to the appearance of the printing press during the Reformation and the spread of the Bible, first of all, in languages that people could read and understand, as a way of challenging the power elite of the day, which was, of course, the Roman Catholic Church. And the Daily Bell says some very interesting things in this respect. It says, first of all, quote, the elites of the day fought back by trying to get ahead of public discontent. Instead of letting the Gutenberg press take its course, the elites apparently supported the inevitable social upheaval by apparently funding both Martin Luther and John Calvin. The elites of the day apparently encouraged war and social crisis. They seem to have helped fund Oliver Cromwell, who overthrew England's royal system, and tried to use people's burgeoning discontent to shape society in a certain way. In the 21st century, the internet has done tremendous damage to the elite memes of social control. Everything from global warming to the so-called war on terror to the real tested efficacy of vaccines are under attack. By allowing people to read source material for themselves, the internet has eviscerated many of the controlling myths of the day in much the same manner as the Gutenberg press exploded myths propounded by the Roman Catholic Church some 500 years ago. The result is a massive subterranean conflict. In order to marshal support for their perspectives, the elites have, in our view, begun cultivating a number of false flag facilities. Among the most prominent recent ones may be Julian Assange and Anonymous. The parallels to Martin Luther and Calvin would seem somewhat clear. The idea is to create a controlled opposition that rolls back the truth-telling of the internet by confusing the larger message. And then down toward the end of the article, this will not necessarily make them reflect on the world's growing authoritarianism. It may make them look with more skepticism, meaning us, the public, at the alternative media movement that Anonymous is supposedly aligned with. And this is something that has bothered me for a long time, and I hope it's bothered you. There are, with Anonymous and WikiLeaks, an obvious organizational structure behind these two entities, particularly Anonymous. And I've argued all along and fought all along that in Anonymous's case, we have an organization that appears to be too well organized, too well financed, too well equipped, and too knowledgeable about the internet to be entirely the spontaneous creation of a few altruistically minded technical hacks able to bring down corporations and so on and so forth. I've always thought that there had to be some power entity behind Anonymous. Now, the Daily Bell's take is quite interesting because there are parallels between what we see going on in the alternative media and what was going on back then with the Reformation. Clearly, the Daily Bell is taking the view that the Reformation, and to a certain extent, I think they would probably also concur that people involved in the Catholic Counter-reformation may also have been manipulated by hidden elites. In other words, they're taking a very conspiratorial view of the Reformation, not so much as having been created by a conspiracy, but once the phenomenon began, once it was clear to the elites that they were in a major social cultural change, they attempted to steer it in the direction that they wanted it to go. And I think that's very perceptive because I think you can argue the same thing is happening now. Clearly, We're at the end of one of those 500-year cycles, and the internet is the key cultural information exchange mechanism that is underneath or underlying this cultural cyclical change. And the elites, in my opinion, just like they did in the Reformation, in the Counter-reformation, are going to attempt to steer the culture and steer it into generalized channels so that they can manipulate and at least influence the change, if not actually drive it and control it. I think this is what's going on. I think that they're right to point out that in this case, the alternative media, places like my website, anybody else's website, I can think of several alternative media outlets that are very, very popular that I've long suspected have some sort of hidden agenda or hidden elite purpose. So the point here is that everybody involved in the alternative media, whether they're involved in disseminating information or involved in reading information and absorbing information from the alternative media, everyone involved in it has to maintain a skeptical, critical attitude. In other words, compare sources. Don't fix one particular outlet as your major source. Try and compare sources between the two. Mix and match the stories. Come to your own conclusions. I think this is particularly the case in some of the things that have been out there in the alternative media for a long time, like UFO or extraterrestrial intelligence disclosure. I think it's particularly the case with some of the 2012 stuff where we have this kind of apocalyptic culture being created around certain memes of expectation. Once you've created those expectations, you can then much more easily manipulate people. Now, one of the things that this Daily Bell article pointed out also is that the standard method that the elites have used in driving or channeling these historical narratives is precisely the dialectic. We would call it the Hegelian dialectic, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. And that's true to a certain extent. I think in the alternative media situation, the Daily Bell put its finger on another important point, and that is that by creating false fronts, by creating false sources of information, they are in fact attempting to obfuscate the discussion. They're attempting to cloud the issue so that any organized or even disorganized social response or populist response to what they're attempting to do is automatically, so to speak, derailed or denuded of some of its momentum. It's dissipated in all of the obfuscation. This is why I think it's very important for people not only to stay informed, but to stay informed from a multitude of sources. Don't rely simply on my website by any means. Don't rely simply on the Daily Bell by any means. Don't rely on all of the standard internet outlets and sources. We all have our favorite ones, obviously. But the point is, compare sources. And this is where I go back to something that I've talked about over and over again at various times. The most important thing in this type of media outlet or this type of media research or comparing notes is I tend to view sources like the Daily Bell that cite sources, that cite quotations as being much more reliable than the type of stuff that one gets so often in alternative media where someone gets on, a whistleblower, an insider, what have you, and simply tells a story and gives no basis for checking the story or corroborating the story. So my my own opinion would be is while we're going through this internet revolution, we need to maintain an extremely skeptical eye and turn away from sources of information that rely solely on story reporting. In other words, solely on somebody telling somebody's story or giving somebody a platform to blow a whistle or be an insider source or so on and so forth. The real important thing right now is to go to those sources that are attempting, howsoever successful they may be, that are at least attempting to buttress what they're arguing or what they're saying with some sort of structure that you can go out and check against, that you can corroborate information by checking other sources, by checking quotations, and so on and so forth. So the bottom line is footnote, footnote, footnote. Anyway, that's it for my news and views for Thursday, March 29th, 2012, the year of the apocalypse. We haven't had any of that lately. I do want to say one final thing. I'm very, very grateful to those of you who've kept me in your prayers and who've help support the website with memberships and donations. I am making some good progress now on the sequel to Babylon's Banksters. Again, I want to thank everybody. I had some real bad, difficult news, and I thank everybody for your support. It's truly appreciated. Anyway, I'll see you on the flip side, everybody. God bless.